Have you ever really stopped to think about the tiny unseen brains? The ones powering literally everything around us? I mean, from the smartphone in your hand to the electric car you see gliding down the highway, even like your morning coffee maker. They all rely on these miniature marvels. We call them semiconductors or, simply chips. Not the salty snack kind,
Yeah,
obviously.
the fundamental building block.
Exactly. They're the unsung heroes, processing data at, lightning speeds. They enable everything from AI that chats like a human
Yep.
to sophisticated defense systems. And right now, the United States, traditionally this powerhouse of innovation, is locked in a monumental, really high-stakes global competition with China over these absolutely crucial components. This isn't just some interesting tech story. It's a profound economic and national security drama unfolding as we speak. It's impacting jobs, global power dynamics, even the future of the devices you use every single day.
And just to truly grasp the scale here, think about this. The global semiconductor market.
Hmm.
It's projected to hit a staggering $1 trillion by 2030. A trillion. So what we're here to do in this deep dive is really unpack the intricate dance between these two global giants. We want to reveal the surprising facts and pivotal moments that brought us here to this critical point. We'll show you exactly why this microscopic battle has such macroscopic consequences for all of us, affecting our daily lives in ways you might not even realize. And you absolutely don't need an engineering degree to get why this matters so much.
Okay, let's unpack what these chips actually are, because it's really vital to understand a key distinction here.
Yeah.
At their core, they're these incredibly thin silicon wafers, etched with unbelievably intricate circuits that process data super fast. But like you said, not all chips are created equal. On one hand, you have the cutting-edge powerhouses, what we call advanced chips.
The top tier.
Right. These use incredibly tiny process nodes, think 3-nanometer technology. They pack billions of transistors onto one tiny piece of silicon. They're the kind of chips you find in supercomputers, driving the most sophisticated AI models. The ones that let chatbots converse so realistically.
The brainiacs of the chip world.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But then there are the legacy chips. These are older, typically using 28 nanometer or maybe larger process nodes. Now, they might not grab the headlines.
No, definitely not the sexy ones.
But they are absolutely everywhere, found in about 70% of all applications. We're talking about the sensors in your smart fridge, the power management systems in electric vehicles, industrial machinery, even the electronics in your toothbrush, believe it or not.
They are the workhorses, the absolute bedrock of the modern world.
They really are.
And this distinction between advanced and legacy chips, this is precisely what's so crucial for understanding the current global dynamic. What's truly insightful here, and maybe a bit overlooked, is that China has quietly amassed this massive lead, a huge lead, in producing these essential legacy chips.
Really? How big a lead?
Well, they've been flooding global supply chains with incredibly cheap, reliable components. Their share of global legacy chip production capacity nearly doubled in just 6 years, and it's projected they could control half 50% by 2029.
Half the world's legacy chips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this isn't just about the fancy bleeding edge stuff. Ignoring the fundamentals, the legacy chips can have massive ramifications. Think about it like building a skyscraper, right? You need a solid foundation. These legacy chips are that unglamorous, but absolutely vital foundation for countless industries. This isn't just a market share issue. It's a critical supply chain vulnerability for everyone else.
Okay, so that sets the stage. But how do we even get here? This is where it gets really interesting, I think. To understand the current drama, we need to rewind the clock a bit. I mean, the semiconductor industry didn't just pop up fully formed in Silicon Valley.
Not at all.
Back in the 1950s and 60s, pioneering American companies, Texas Instruments, Fairchild Semiconductor, they were literally inventing the integrated circuit. And the U.S. government, very aware of the Cold War stakes, poured significant money into research. They saw chips as absolutely key to beating the Soviets, both in space and in military tech. It was a strategic imperative.
Absolutely. National security drove innovation.
Then fast forward to the 1980s, suddenly Japan emerges as this major threat dominating the market for memory chips. Remember that?
Oh, I remember the headlines. The Japan Inc. fear.
Right. And the U.S. responded forcefully. Tariffs, sure, but also the creation of Semitech, that public-private partnership. It actually worked pretty well, helping the U.S. reclaim its lead, a real collaboration between industry and government.
It was a significant moment, showing the U.S. could respond strategically when challenged.
But then came the era of, well, globalization. Companies started aggressively outsourcing manufacturing. Taiwan, South Korea, and eventually China, all chasing higher profits, lower costs, better efficiency.
It was like everyone chasing the ice cream truck, as you put it earlier, going wherever the best deal was found.
Yeah, exactly. Without maybe fully recognizing the long-term strategic implications of hollowing out domestic manufacturing.
And that pursuit of efficiency, while it definitely drove down costs for consumers, which was great in one way,
Yeah.
it was also quietly eroding America's strategic self-sufficiency. It created vulnerabilities we're only now truly seriously reckoning with.
So China enters the picture.
Yeah.
When was that mainly?
They really came onto the scene in the early 2000s, especially after joining the World Trade Organization. But here's the key. Beijing didn't just want to be the world's factory assembling iPhones for other companies. No, they aimed for the whole enchilada. They wanted the entire value chain.
Right.
We've seen their strategic plans like Made in China 2025. This involved massively subsidizing factories, aggressively poaching talent from places like Taiwan and the US, and meticulously building a full domestic chip ecosystem from the ground up.
And the results?
Well, today, China produces about 24% of the world's chips overall. But as we discussed with legacy chips, their share there has exploded, nearly doubled in 6 years, heading towards 50% by 2029.
And this wasn't just market forces at play.
Not even close. This wasn't organic market growth. It was turbocharged by government subsidies. Estimates put it over $150 billion in the past decade alone. Plus, tactics like alleged forced technology transfers from foreign companies operating there.
It's like that analogy you used, inviting a rival chef into your kitchen.
Yeah, sharing your proprietary techniques, maybe under pressure, and then watching them open a massive chain of restaurants using your exact secret sauce. This really presents an unprecedented challenge to the traditional free market model. It's forcing nations everywhere to reconsider the basic rules of global competition.
So given this huge shift in China's rise, what does this mean for the U.S. now? Obviously, there's been a reaction. Both the Trump and Biden administrations seem to recognize this imbalance as a major wake-up call. They understood the economic risks, the national security risks.
Definitely a bipartisan recognition of the problem, even if the proposed solutions varied a bit.
And we've seen the Biden administration's really supercharged response with the CHAPS and Science Act in 2022. That's the big one.
Huge. $52 billion.
$52 billion. And a significant chunk, up to $10 billion, is specifically earmarked for legacy chips, right? The ones China's dominating.
Exactly. They realize you can't just focus on the cutting edge. You need the foundation, too.
And money is already flowing.
Oh, yeah. Over $1.7 billion has already been awarded to companies building factories for those mature process nodes right here in the U.S.
So it's like the government saying, okay, here's some serious cash. Build these plants in Ohio, Arizona, wherever, instead of relying so heavily on overseas suppliers.
Pretty much. Incentivizing domestic production.
And it's not just U.S. companies getting this boost. Big international players are investing, too. I heard about TSMC.
That's right. TSMC, the Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing company, the world's largest contract chip maker, absolutely dominant in advanced chips. They're investing billions in new U.S. facilities. Plans announced in 2025 talked about $100 billion across 5 new fabs, these huge fabrication plants, in places like Arizona.
$100 billion, that's enormous.
It's a massive pivot. A real attempt to onshore significant production capacity, create tens of thousands of high-paying tech and construction jobs here at home.
But the question is just throwing money at the problem enough? Can billions in subsidies alone turn the tide?
That is the critical question, isn't it? Capital investment is crucial, absolutely necessary, but no, it's likely not sufficient on its own. The U.S. is also engaging in a series of pretty robust investigations and direct control to try and counter China's chip ambitions more directly.
Like what specifically?
Well, in late 2024, the U.S. Trade Representative launched this year-long probe into China's legacy chip practices. It's under Section 301 of the Trade Act. And the allegations being investigated are incredibly serious. Things like cyber intrusions to steal trade secrets, those forced technology transfers we mentioned, and this practice of dumping.
Dumping, meaning selling below cost.
Exactly. Dumping chips onto the global market at maybe 30 to 50% below their actual production costs, specifically to undercut competitors and grab market share.
And is there evidence of this?
There's substantial evidence suggested by industry groups and analysts indicating that Chinese firms, backed by those huge state subsidies, are indeed underpricing significantly. This isn't just paranoia, it's a documented concern. So this probe is examining the impacts across vital U.S. industries. Defense, for one, legacy chips, power missiles, radar systems, you know it.
Right.
And the auto sector, especially EVs, which rely heavily on these less glamorous but essential components. China's dominance here could genuinely mean significant supply disruptions in a crisis, or just give them huge leverage.
Okay, so investigations. What else?
On top of that, in December 2024, export controls were tightened significantly. They targeted about 140 Chinese companies, banning sales of specific advanced manufacturing tools and also things like high bandwidth memory chips, which are absolutely essential for advanced AI development.
So hitting them on both legacy and advanced fronts.
Trying to, yes. The explicit goal here is to impair China's ability to produce the most cutting edge technology and maintain or regain a strategic lead for the U.S. and its allies.
Okay, so the U.S. is playing offense and defense. But China? China isn't just sitting there taking it, are they?
Not at all. They're responding forcefully. They launched their own massive fund, the Big Funds Phase 3, in 2024, something like $47 billion aimed at boosting chip sovereignty. They're pouring cash into their domestic champions like that's Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation, China's biggest chip foundry, and of course, Huawei.
Huawei is such an interesting case, hit so hard by U.S. bans back in 2019, cut off from key tech.
Devastating for their smartphone business initially.
But they seem to have bounced back. They showed remarkable resilience, didn't they? Coming out with homegrown 5G chips.
They really did. It shocked quite a few observers. And they're not just catching up, they're innovating in specific areas too, like silicon carbide substrates for electric vehicles and next-gen material. They're driving down prices and grabbing significant market share there. It's a strategic move to lead in new niches.
Wow. So it's not just about defense, it's about offense too.
Absolutely. What's truly striking is China's whole-of-nation approach. It's this unified effort across government, academia, industry, everyone pulling in the same direction. For instance, firms like Huawei are actively designing around the U.S. bans. They're embracing open-source RACV architecture.
What's that exactly?
It's a royalty-free, open-standard chip design. It allows companies much greater customization and, crucially, helps them avoid reliance on proprietary Western technology licenses, like those from ARM. It's a long-term play for self-sufficiency. And they've invested massively in domestic tools, too. Companies like Nora and AMEC, these are leading Chinese developers of chip manufacturing equipment. They're developing their own etching and deposition tools, critical steps in chip making, despite being on U.S. sanctions lists, the entity list.
They're trying to replicate the whole supply chain domestically.
That's the goal. Now, this resilience is impressive, but it's not without challenges. We have seen Semic's advanced fabs face significant delays, reportedly due to shortages of the most cutting-edge equipment, like those EUV lithography machines from ASML, which are restricted.
Right, which brings us smack into the middle of the geopolitical chess game, doesn't it? Because at the center of all this, looming large, Taiwan.
An elephant in the clean room. Absolutely.
We mentioned TSMC earlier, producing something like 90% of the world's advanced chips right there. What does that single point of failure mean for global stability?
It means Taiwan is arguably the most critical geopolitical hotspot on the planet right now, at least from a tech perspective. Any conflict, any major disruption there, it could halt global tech production almost overnight.
Grind the world economy to a halt.
Pretty much. It's a terrifying prospect. The U.S. is actively trying to diversify away from this risk that's part of what the GHPS Act and TSMC's Arizona fabs are about, but it's like trying to quit coffee by switching to decaf, as the saying goes.
Still addicted, just less jittery.
Exactly. The dependency runs incredibly deep, and building alternative capacity takes years, even decades.
And speaking of dependencies and strategies, there's a definite irony in this whole chipocalypse, isn't there?
How so?
Well, both sides, the U.S. and China, preach the virtues of free markets when it suits them, yet they're both dishing out massive subsidies like candy at Halloween. The U.S.'s HEPS Act is basically industrial policy on steroids, right? Yet U.S. politicians are often the first to decry China's state intervention. Is this just hypocrisy or pragmatic necessity?
That's a fantastic point. It really forces us to confront whether traditional free market principles can even stand up against a state-directed economic powerhouse playing by different rules. You could call it the pot calling the kettle black, sure. But it also reflects a shifting global reality where strategic industries like semiconductors are no longer being left entirely to market forces, even by free market advocates. National security is trumping pure economic theory.
And on the flip side of these government controls, we've seen some pretty surprising, almost wild stories pop up, like smuggling.
Oh, yeah. Did you hear about the reports that over $1 billion worth of banned NVIDIA AI chips were apparently sneaked into China in 2025, sold openly on social media apps there?
$1 billion worth. How does that even happen with export controls?
It shows the immense difficulty of enforcement. It's like prohibiting fireworks but finding them at every backyard BBQ anyway. When the demand and profits are high enough, people find ways. It's a constant game of whack-a-mole for regulator.
Wow. And then there was that weird NVIDIA deal.
Ah, yes. The twist where NVIDIA, a leading U.S. AI chip designer, reportedly agreed to share something like 15% of its AI chip revenues generated from sales in China with the U.S. government in 2025.
So like a tax on selling to China.
Effectively, yeah. It's like Uncle Sam saying, okay, if you absolutely must sell these sensitive technologies to them, despite the controls, then I'm taking a cut for the trouble and the risk. A very unusual arrangement.
Definitely sounds unusual. And beyond these direct U.S.-China things, the U.S. is building alliances, right? Of
Yeah.
trying to get other countries on board.
Absolutely crucial part of the strategy. They're urging key partners like Japan and especially the Netherlands home to ASML.
ASML, the company with the super advanced lithography machines.
Exactly. ASML holds a near monopoly on the extreme ultraviolet, or EUV, lithography machines needed to make the most advanced chips, and they dominate the generation before that, DUV, too. The Dutch government has already restricted some sales to China under U.S. pressure, so the U.S. is pushing these allies to tighten the screws further on tech exports to China. It's a multilateral squeeze play. And there are moves like the U.S. proposing new rules to stop American investment flowing into Chinese military-linked AI companies. It's a multi-front effort.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit. This monumental push and pull, this competition, it has ripple effects that touch everyone listening, right? How does this affect us?
Absolutely. First, the economic impact. Global supply chains are definitely more fragile, more uncertain because of this. If the U.S. succeeds in onshoring more production with the GHPS Act, well, you might see prices for your gadgets rise, maybe noticeably. Manufacturing costs are generally higher here than overseas.
Okay, so potentially higher prices. What's the flip side?
Well, the flip side is if China ultimately dominates, especially in legacy chips, our vulnerabilities grow significantly. Think about it. Beijing could potentially withhold chips during a political dispute, just like they've flexed their muscles with rare earths in the past.
Right, they control most rare earth refining, which is also critical for chips.
Exactly. China controls about 85% of global rare earth refining capacity, so dependency creates leverage for them.
Okay, economic risks and potential costs. What else? Innovation.
That's the second big area. This intense competition could actually spark incredible innovation, a bit like the space race did. American startups are definitely booming, fueled partly by sheet GPS funding. They're pushing boundaries, developing next-gen materials, new chip designs. There's a lot of energy there.
And China.
China, forced to become more self-reliant, is accelerating its own research. They're pushing hard in areas like quantum computing, maybe even fusion energy. They could potentially leap ahead in select areas, independent of Western tech paths.
So the race is on, not just for faster chips, but for who shapes the entire future economy and tech landscape.
Precisely. And for you, the consumer, what does this mean? Well, your next car or phone might cost a bit more, potentially. But the upside could be more secure, resilient supply chains in the long run. We're already seeing complex maneuvers. Auto giants like Volkswagen are actually partnering with Chinese firms for specific self-driving chips, showing just how deep and sometimes surprising the entanglements across the industry really are. It's not always a simple us versus them picture.
It's definitely complicated.
And if we look at this whole situation through the lens of history, it offers some really fascinating lessons, maybe some warnings. Remember Japan's dominance in memory chips back in the 1980s? They briefly overtook the U.S. by focusing intensely on scale and manufacturing efficiency.
Yeah, but they faltered later, didn't they?
They did. As the industry shifted and the U.S. innovated in microprocessors, China could follow a similar path, maybe, but China's different. With 1.4 billion people, a massive domestic market, and seemingly endless state funding directed with strategic patience, they're arguably built for the long haul in a way Japan wasn't.
So the U.S. controls might not be a knockout blow.
Many experts suggest that while these controls will definitely slow China's progress, especially at the cutting edge, they likely won't stop them entirely. In fact, paradoxically, they could spur China's drive for self-reliance even faster, force them to innovate domestically in ways they might not have otherwise. And this dynamic also drives innovation everywhere else. Take those silicon carbide chips for EVs from China we mentioned. They're slashing prices, forcing companies like Tesla and others to push their own technology boundaries even harder just to stay ahead and maintain their competitive edge. Competition Even challenging competition can be a powerful stimulant.
A complex picture indeed.
So, wrapping up, this multi-billion-dollar push from the U.S. through the targeted CHIPS funding, the aggressive trade probes, the export controls, it's America's determined bet on reclaiming semiconductor supremacy, or at least ensuring resilience. It's genuinely compelling to watch these superpowers spar over microscopic technology. But the real takeaway, the real education for all of us, is understanding how profoundly this high-stakes game affects our daily lives, our economy, and the whole global balance of power.
Indeed. From the jobs available to the cost and capability of the gadgets we rely on every single day, this global chip saga is clearly far, far from over. It's this incredibly complex dance of technology, economics, and geopolitics, and it's constantly evolving. New twists, new turns seem to appear all the time. So here's a final thought for you to mull over. Could the very measures the U.S. is designing to contain China's chip ambitions actually end up accelerating their self-reliance? Could it lead them to unexpected breakthroughs, creating a competitor who is stronger and more independent in the long run? And what might that mean for the next generation of global technology? Who knows? Maybe the next huge breakthrough won't come from Silicon Valley or Taiwan, but from an unexpected corner, proving yet again that in the world of technology, the underdog often finds a way to bite back. Hardest.